Have you ever stopped to think that everything you believe about your own mind might be wrong? That little voice in your head, that feeling of, I know what I am doing, might be just a carefully constructed illusion. Most people live entirely trapped in this narrative, unaware that they are following automatic patterns like puppets. But what if I told you that there is a way to see beyond these layers, understand the secrets of your consciousness, and discover truths about yourself that no one has ever told? Get ready, because what you are about to discover will change the way you see yourself and how you perceive the world around you. If topics like psychology, philosophy, and the darkness of the human soul interest you, subscribe to the channel now. The discomfort of perceiving consciousness as something larger than the ego. Have you noticed that at certain moments, life seems to escape the automatic? Like when you are sitting in silence and suddenly that strange feeling arises that something greater is happening behind the routine. It is as if the whole world ceases to be so solid and reveals a crack, a mystery that until then was hidden. In these moments, consciousness reveals itself as an ocean, and the ego is just a small island floating. Imagine being on the subway, looking at unknown faces around you. Each face carries within it a complex story, full of memories, secrets, and invisible pains. It is at this moment the perception expands and you understand that each person is a living universe. And upon realizing this, something inside you breaks. The illusion that there is a central narrative in which we are all acting together. This experience even has a name: Sonder. It is the shock of understanding that each person you cross paths with has a life as intense as yours. It is uncomfortable but also liberating. The writer David Foster Wallace said that everyone is infinitely complex inside, but almost no one lives as if they believed it. And when that realization hits, it is impossible to look at the world the same way. Consciousness, in this sense, is the stage where everything happens. But the stage cannot be seen from the outside. It is like the eye that can never see itself directly. You perceive the scenery, you perceive the characters, but you can never capture who is really looking. It is this impossibility that makes consciousness so disturbing and, at the same time, so fascinating. The curious thing is that the more you try to observe consciousness, the more it slips through your fingers. It does not allow itself to be reduced to a simple explanation. It is like fine sand slipping through your hands. Philosophers, physicists, thinkers all stumble on the same point. What we call consciousness seems to be, at the same time, intimate and unattainable. Ask yourself, does the mind you call your own really belong to you? Or is it just a current in a larger river, and you merely identify with a momentary wave? This doubt is not only intellectual, it shakes your own identity. After all, if what you believe to be I is just a reflection within something larger, who is really living your life? Jung said that the ego is just a small island within the vast field of consciousness. And Alan Watts reinforced this, reminding us that you do not enter the world, you are an expression of it. This inverts everything. You are not an external observer looking at the universe. You are the universe itself looking at itself from a specific angle. Strange? Yes, but it might be the first step to understanding the depth of existence. And it is precisely at this point that the inevitable question arises. What happens when we stop looking only at the world and turn our gaze to the observer itself? When the focus is no longer on external things, but on what perceives, the whole game changes. Because it is at this moment that we begin to question the very structure of reality and enter a territory where nothing is obvious. When you realize that consciousness is not what it seems, imagine you are walking through your routine and suddenly feel a strange discomfort, as if something inside you begins to whisper. It is consciousness questioning itself, creating small fissures in what you have always believed to be normal. And these fissures are not bad. On the contrary, they open invisible doors, where you begin to see reality in a light you had never noticed before. When the mind tries to label everything, consciousness escapes. It is like that character in a mystery movie who sees the truth behind everyone's mask, but no one believes them. This moment can be unsettling because you begin to notice patterns, automatic decisions, and even that feeling of, I am doing this without meaning to. It is the first spark of a profound awakening. And then comes the strangeness. You realize that thoughts and feelings arise without complete control, as if they were unexpected visitors. It is like playing a game and discovering that the protagonist is not fully under your command, but reacts to hidden codes you barely understand. This moment is frightening, but also fascinating. Here, the spectator of their own life becomes curious, eager to explore every layer of the mind. The feeling of being an observer of oneself is intense. It is like watching a complex series full of twists, where you know all the characters but are still surprised by their actions. You begin to notice that many behaviors are automatic, shaped by old habits and external influences, and this perception, though subtle, is transformative. It is at this point that many people get lost because questioning consciousness does not offer easy answers. It only points, discreetly, to internal inconsistencies and contradictions. And the more you observe, the more you realize that living mechanically is exhausting. Curiosity then becomes a powerful tool, almost like a secret map indicating paths to understand your own mind. Everyday experiences begin to gain new meanings. That argument that seemed insignificant, the pleasure of a simple moment, or even unexpected anger, are analyzed with an inner gaze. It is as if reality were a kind of chess game, and you now see movements that were previously invisible, subtle patterns that shaped the human experience. This awakening is not linear. There are moments of confusion, uncertainty, and even fear. It is like a labyrinth where each turn reveals new doors, but you do not yet have the key. Even so, each step brings clarity. You begin to distinguish what truly arises from you and what is a reflection of the world around you. This deeper consciousness even transforms the way you interact with others and yourself. Gradually, questioning consciousness becomes an almost addictive habit because each insight opens new questions. It is as if each layer removed reveals another layer, infinitely. And in this process, you begin to realize that there are no final answers, only constant discoveries. And it is precisely this constancy that keeps the mind alive and alert, ready for the next stage of the journey. The experience of feeling disconnected from the known self. Suddenly, you realize that what you called I seems less solid than you imagined. That identity you built with routines, habits, and certainties begins to tremble, as if looking into a mirror that reflects more shadows than light. It is unsettling but fascinating because now you begin to see the I as something constantly under construction, not a fixed truth. This disconnection is not something easily explained. It is like being inside a virtual reality game where everything seems familiar, but there are details that do not match, different textures, sounds you never noticed. Each daily action is observed carefully. Each emotional reaction gains new meaning, and you begin to ask yourself, who is really feeling this? As this perception intensifies, an unsettling inner silence arises. It is as if your own thought says, "You have never really known me." And it is true. Most of us live guided by automatic patterns, pre-shaped ideas, and external expectations. Recognizing this produces a sense of freedom and, at the same time, a strange vulnerability. Curiously, this disconnection is also liberating. Imagine a movie character who discovers they can leave the rules of the world they live in. Suddenly, they begin to perceive possibilities previously invisible. In real life, questioning the I allows experimenting with choices that would not be made by a mental autopilot. It is the beginning of autonomy that most have never dared to explore. but do not think it is easy. The shock between the known I and the observing I creates tensions, doubts, and even fear of losing control. You feel like you are walking on an invisible tightrope between familiarity and the unknown. And it is precisely in this unstable space that the deepest learning occurs, because each hesitation reveals layers of the mind that were hidden. Everyday moments, such as interactions with friends or simple decisions, are viewed differently. It is like playing a complicated puzzle where each piece gains new connections with each move. Understanding how consciousness shapes automatic reactions brings clarity about behavior patterns, and you begin to ask yourself, how many of these choices truly belong to me? This feeling of internal strangeness does not need to be frightening. On the contrary, it acts as an alert that you are waking up to a broader reality. It is the opportunity to become conscious of the unconscious, to look inward and understand that life is not just a sequence of events, but an experience that can be observed, understood, and gradually shaped. And so, this disconnection from the known I becomes a silent door to transformation. Each step you take within this perception opens new perspectives, new questions, and new possibilities. The curious thing is that the more you notice this fluidity, the more you prepare for the next stage, where consciousness begins to expand beyond the limitations of the I you believed you had. The impact of questioning your own perception of reality. When you begin to question your own perception, the world around you seems to change subtly, almost imperceptibly. Those familiar places suddenly reveal details you never noticed. A sound, an expression, a smell that awakens forgotten memories. It is as if reality were a constantly updating screen, and you begin to see the pixels that previously went unnoticed. Perception, you realize, is not a faithful mirror of the world. It is a lens shaped by experiences, emotions, and old patterns. It is like watching a movie and realizing that each character interprets the story differently. This discovery can be uncomfortable because you realize that absolute truth may not exist, but it is also exciting because it opens space to explore new ways of understanding life. And then comes the awareness that many internal and external conflicts arise from distorted perceptions. That irritation with someone, the fear of failing, sudden anxiety, all begin to be seen as a reflection of the mind interpreting signals in a limited way. Recognizing this allows you to breathe more deeply, observe carefully, and gradually respond more consciously and less automatically. Curiously, questioning perception creates a domino effect. The more you observe, the more you notice subtle nuances that previously escaped you. It is like in strategy games, where each move reveals new opportunities and risks. Suddenly, you become a more attentive player of your own life, able to notice traps and opportunities that were hidden in plain sight, waiting to be understood. However, this heightened perception also brings challenges. It is not always comfortable to notice that many certainties you had were illusory. It is like discovering an old secret in a series you have followed for years, something that completely changes the interpretation of the story. But it is precisely in this discomfort that the mind expands, learning to deal with ambiguities and explore unprecedented possibilities. Over time, you realize that perception is not only about seeing or hearing, but feeling, intuiting, and connecting invisible points. Each experience, each social interaction, each emotion becomes a clue about the inner workings of the mind and consciousness. It is an almost alchemical practice. You transform observation into understanding, understanding into consciousness, and consciousness into a new way of living. This impact is not limited to you. It reverberates in relationships and the way you communicate. Noticing nuances in other people's gestures and words allows you to understand intentions, fears, and desires more clearly. It is as if you had an internal radar, calibrated by conscious observation, capable of picking up subtle signals that previously went unnoticed. And gradually, questioning the perception of reality becomes an almost natural habit, like breathing. Every moment of life begins to be observed, every decision considered, every emotion felt deeply. And this silent, continuous practice prepares the ground for the next stage, encountering your own mind and understanding that external and internal reality are intrinsically connected. The tension between freedom and internal control. When you question consciousness, a silent tension arises within you. The desire for freedom versus the perception that much of what you do is automatic. It is like driving a car that seems yours, but realizing that part of the controls is being executed without your attention. This conflict awakens intense curiosity, almost irresistible, to understand what is really under your control. This tension manifests in small everyday decisions, like choosing words in a conversation or deciding how to react to an emotional situation. Suddenly, you notice the difference between responding impulsively and observing before acting. It is like pausing a movie at the right moment and noticing details that completely change the interpretation of the story. And the more this consciousness expands, the more you feel that external control loses strength. Situations that previously caused anxiety now become opportunities to observe patterns and understand choices. It is like learning to surf. At first, you try to control every wave. Then you realize that moving with the current is the true skill. But do not be mistaken. This freedom is challenging. Questioning your own mind requires courage because you face habits, beliefs, and thoughts that were hidden. It is like exploring an ancient castle and discovering corridors that no one knew existed, full of traps and hidden treasures at the same time. Understanding this tension allows you to begin shaping your mind consciously. Each decision, each reaction, each thought can be observed and gradually redirected. It is a process of continuous training, almost like learning a mental martial art, where discipline and perception walk together to transform your own life experience. This practice transforms the way you perceive emotions and desires. What was once confusing or overwhelming begins to be decoded with clarity. Impulses, fears, and frustrations become signals for understanding, not enemies to be suppressed. It is a type of internal intelligence that, the more you develop, the more freedom you find to act consciously. And it is curious to notice how this internal freedom affects the external world. Relationships, work, decisions, and even leisure begin to be lived with greater presence, intensity, and understanding. It is as if an invisible lens had been adjusted, revealing details and connections that were previously invisible, allowing you to navigate life with more balance and discernment. This tension between freedom and control does not disappear. It transforms into a silent engine of continuous learning. Every moment lived with deep attention opens doors to new discoveries about yourself and the world. And it is precisely this energy that leads to the next stage, the conscious integration between perception, action, and identity, where you begin to perceive the real depth of your own consciousness. The discovery of hidden layers of the mind. When you dive into your own consciousness, you realize that there are layers that have never been explored, like an old building full of locked rooms. Each layer holds memories, habits, and emotions that influence your behavior without your awareness. It is fascinating and a little frightening because you begin to understand that much of what seems normal is actually automated. As you explore these layers, unexpected insights about past decisions emerge. It is like reviewing old photos and noticing details you never observed. An expression, a gesture, a shadow that explains feelings that previously seemed incomprehensible. Each discovery adds depth to your own story and the way you understand yourself. This exploration also reveals hidden patterns of behavior, automatic reactions, inexplicable fears, or persistent habits begin to make sense when you observe them without judgment. It is like disassembling a complex clock and understanding the gear of each movement. Suddenly, chaos becomes understanding. And the more you observe, the more you notice that each layer of the mind is interconnected. Old emotions influence present decisions, memories shape interpretations of events, and automatic thoughts create imaginary scenarios that control actions. It is like discovering that internal reality is a map you did not even know existed. This awareness of hidden layers also transforms your relationship with the external world. You begin to notice the many reactions in other people reflect your own projections, recurring patterns, and mirrors of internal emotions. It is as if life itself had become a laboratory to experiment, understand, and evolve internally. Exploring the mind in this way requires patience and curiosity. It is not something resolved quickly. Each revealed layer brings new questions and paths to follow. It is like playing an endless puzzle game, where each solution opens doors to even more complex challenges, keeping the mind alert and engaged. Gradually, you learn to navigate between these layers without getting lost. Constant observation allows you to recognize triggers, patterns, and impulses, and with that, choose more conscious responses. It is a silent but powerful skill that transforms decisions, emotions, and your very perception of who you are. And when you realize it, exploring these hidden layers becomes a natural habit, almost inevitable. Each thought, each emotion, and each reaction becomes a clue for new discoveries, creating a continuous cycle of self-knowledge. This cycle prepares the ground for the final stage of the journey, the full integration of consciousness with the life experience. The integration of consciousness and the expansion of perception. At this point, you begin to realize that consciousness is not only an observer, but also a builder of reality itself. It is like a conductor who, by recognizing each instrument, can lead a complex symphony. Each decision, each thought, and each emotion gains more meaning, and you learn to navigate among them with more clarity. Integrating consciousness means realizing that automatic thoughts and old patterns are not enemies, but signals indicating areas to be understood. It is like an old map, full of hidden paths that can only be explored with attention and patience. This perception transforms the fear of the unknown into active, almost pleasurable curiosity. At this stage, the mind becomes more flexible. You begin to perceive alternatives that previously seemed impossible and find creative solutions to old problems. It is like playing a game where new skills are unlocked at each level, revealing possibilities that were hidden under layers of conditioning and habit. Integration also transforms the relationship with emotions and past experiences. You stop being a hostage of old feelings and begin to observe them as clues about yourself, understanding the function of each emotion in the context of your life. It is like reorganizing an old library, finding meaning in books that previously seemed scattered and disconnected. With integrated consciousness, you realize that each interaction with the world becomes deeper. Your view of people, situations, and challenges is clearer, allowing more conscious responses. It is like seeing beyond the surface of a film or series, noticing intentions, symbolism, and invisible connections that enrich the experience. This expansion of perception is not static. It is continuous and growing. Each insight, each reflection, and each internal observation opens space for new discoveries about yourself and the world. It is as if each layer of the mind you explored connects into a living mosaic, constantly moving and evolving. A silent effect of this integration is internal freedom. You begin to realize that you do not need to react automatically, that conscious choices are possible, and that life itself can be lived with more presence and authenticity. It is like learning to drive without fear, knowing every gear of the car and the road ahead. And finally, this integration prepares you for new horizons of consciousness, where perception expands beyond the immediate eye, connecting with broader life experiences. Every moment lived becomes an opportunity to observe, understand, and create, keeping the mind awake and curious, ready for the next layer of discovery. So, after diving into this universe of consciousness, what did you think of the content? Did you notice how each layer of the mind influences your choices and emotions? I want to know in the comments which character or thinker you want me to analyze in the next video, because this journey of self-knowledge continues with each discovery. And do not forget, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next videos that will further deepen this exploration of the mind and consciousness. Each click is one more step in this journey. These 2 videos in front of you are not here by chance. And what if everything you believe about yourself is just a reflection of someone else's gaze? Click now on one of the videos beside you and start breaking this mirror. You will have to risk the click. So, which one will you choose?